Good afternoon. Today, Lieutenant Governor Polito, HED Secretary Mike Keneally, and I will be talking about important funding to support small businesses here in the Commonwealth. But first, I'm going to provide a quick update on the state's COVID numbers. Yesterday, the Department of Public Health reported 4,162 new cases. There were 90,789 tests done and reported, and we now have done over 10 million tests here in the Commonwealth. 1,919 individuals are being treated in the hospital for COVID, and 387 of those folks are in the ICU. We'll obviously continue to closely monitor this data, including new cases and hospitalizations, as we head into the brunt of what I might call the holiday season. As a result of the Thanksgiving surge in cases and the huge number of people ending up testing positive and in the hospital, our healthcare system is under immense pressure these days, and this certainly threatens, in some respects, our system's ability to continue to care for everybody who needs help. This obviously is a huge concern. It's critical that we make sure that our healthcare system can provide the life-saving care to both COVID-19 patients and to non-COVID-19 patients who are in need of urgent medical assistance. The upticks in cases and hospitalizations that started after Thanksgiving has slowed slightly, but not enough by any means, especially with the Christmas and New Year's holidays coming up, where we unfortunately anticipate there could be another significant surge. If this second holiday season produces a surge in infections that we saw that's similar to the one that came out of Thanksgiving, we'll be in serious danger of overwhelming our healthcare system. As we discuss this and model it, every option is on the table, and we're currently reviewing additional steps that we can take to try to minimize the impact of all this. But the tools that we have available at our disposal won't stop the virus alone. We continue to need everyone, and I mean everyone, to think really hard about the consequences of the actions that they take throughout the rest of this holiday season. And let me just be as clear as I can be about this. In some respects, we're basically begging everyone to stay within their immediate household over the course of this holiday season. We're not asking people to do this forever. We're asking them to do it for the next 10 or 12 days. We can have the kind of celebrations we want to have around Christmas and New Year's next year. But we simply can't afford to have another spike, one of the largest in the United States, take place after the Christmas holiday while we're still dealing with the spike that came from Thanksgiving. We'll have more to talk about on this soon. And while we're certainly doing all we can to fight the virus and keep our economy humming, there's no question that we are obviously in need of support from our colleagues in Washington. Many of us spent a good part of the weekend tracking and following the back and forth in the conversations that were taking place in D.C. And it's gratifying and a bit of a relief that Congress is currently in the process of finalizing a deal for another COVID relief package. We anticipate this will include funding for an extension of unemployment assistance, which for many people would have run out on 12/31 of this year, and a variety of other COVID-related resources around testing, vaccinations, and tracing, rental assistance funds, small business supports, and a series of other critically important initiatives to support people, not just here in Massachusetts, but around the country. And obviously, we're hoping and anticipating that Congress will swiftly approve this and get it done and get it to the President so that he can sign it. After months of uncertainty and challenging circumstances, this support is a welcome present for so many people here in Massachusetts and around the country who need it to help build the bridge between here and the successful implementation of a widespread, safe, and effective vaccine. This has obviously also been a very challenging year for other sectors of our economy, and small business owners, perhaps more than anyone else, have gone through unimaginable disruption, loss, and uncertainty. Despite that, they've done everything in their power to keep their staff and their customers as safe as they possibly can, and to commit to the state's very aggressive safety protocols. But even the most creative businesses, especially small ones, need support, especially those in gateway cities and in many of our neighborhoods of color. In October, we announced a $774 million comprehensive economic recovery plan with a $50.8 million small business grant program to be administered by the Massachusetts Growth Capital Corporation. These grants prioritize business owners who are businesses owned by underrepresented entrepreneurs and those that did not or were unable to access the federal Paycheck Protection Program or other federal or state aid. Through partnerships with business groups and community organizations, including the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, Amplify Latinx, the Massachusetts Association of Community Development Corporations, the Statewide Coalition for an Equitable Economy, Local Support Initiatives Corporation, and the Foundation of Business Equity's Business Equity Initiative, a significant portion of the applications, 37% in the applicant pool, were from minority-owned businesses. Our administration, through the MGCC, has spent weeks reviewing applications to ensure that funding reached the highest need, small businesses. Today, we're pleased to announce that we're distributing grants to 1,158 Massachusetts small businesses. Recipients will be notified later today that their applications have been accepted and approved. 100% of the recipients are minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, LGBTQ-owned, or owned by individuals with disabilities. Lieutenant Governor Polito and Secretary Keneally will get into more detail in a few minutes. We do want to point out, however, that there are an exceptionally large number of applicants, more than 10,000 all in, who are seeking over $500 million in relief. The funds for the first round clearly didn't cover the ground associated with those who applied. But I am pleased to announce that the Mass Growth Capital Corporation did receive an additional $17.5 million in small business relief from this year's budget that we just signed, and that budget also contains $9 million for small business technical assistance and grants. The MGCC will go back to the existing pool of applicants soon to select recipients for a second round. And this chunk of money is obviously a good start, but our administration's original budget proposal to the legislature included significantly more. That's why last week we filed a supplemental budget that contains another $50 million in additional funding for small businesses, including $17.5 million for this particular grant program. And obviously, the list of businesses that need our help keep growing. While we understand the budget process was immensely challenging this year, we believe we can afford this additional funding, and we hope the legislature will act soon on this assistance. Even with the additional funding that I just mentioned, we know the need far exceeds these resources, and that's why we hope to see the Economic Recovery Bill, which we also filed earlier this year, which contains an additional $275 million in authorizations, including $50 million more in small business assistance, will be enacted by the legislature soon. It's an excellent package, and it can make a real difference for a lot of people who at this point in time really need it. And before I pass this off to the Lieutenant Governor, I do want to mention that we have a short update on the Transportation and Climate Initiative that we've been working with our colleagues across many other states on for the past year or so. Well, COVID-19 has obviously dominated our agenda day to day. We haven't taken our eyes off this other urgent challenge that the Commonwealth, the country, and the world is facing, which has to do with climate change. Across the nation and here in Massachusetts, we're already seeing the impacts from climate change, like increasingly severe storms, more frequent droughts, floods, and across the South, a hurricane season unlike any other. I believe that we as a Commonwealth have an obligation to address this challenge, which is why earlier this year we committed Massachusetts to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. And today Massachusetts is joining Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont, Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo, and Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser in launching a Transportation and Climate Initiative program. This bipartisan approach will reduce transportation sector pollution by at least 25%, and we should all remember at this point transportation is the single biggest generator of carbon emissions in the carbon emission generating pool, and will generate over $1 billion for Massachusetts by 2032 that can be invested in cleaner, more equitable, and more affordable transportation options. Together, the states of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island account for about 73% of transportation initiatives in New England, a pretty good place to start. The close connection among our economies and transportation systems will also ensure that this program creates employment opportunities and economic growth for the Commonwealth as well as the Southern New England region. Under the MOU that we signed today, the program is slated to begin in 2023 after a reporting year to allow for additional jurisdictions to sign on. And while we're the first states to commit to this program, we'll work with the other states that are involved with the Transportation Climate Initiative, including for the first time the state of North Carolina, on the further development of this program. And as part of this initiative, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Vermont, and Virginia, who have participated actively in working with us to develop the program, will have an opportunity to implement it at some later date. And we expect and look forward to seeing additional states join in implementing this program as we go forward. This is clearly an important agreement, and it will ultimately strengthen our economy, improve our public health, and allow us to build the resilient, clean transportation system of the future that we all believe we need.